She buried her heart with her first mate, until the Lycan King dragged her from the grave and demanded she carry his heir. The moon hung like a wound in the sky, bleeding silver light across the cemetery where Elena knelt. Her fingers dug into the earth, dirt caking beneath her nails as she pressed her forehead against the cold headstone. 3 months. 3 months since the rogue attack that tore James from her arms, since his last breath rattled against her chest, since the mate bond snapped like a severed cord and left her hollow. "James," she whispered, her voice raw from tears that no longer came. She was empty now, a shell. I can't do this without you." The wind carried no answer. It never did. Behind her, the pack house lights glowed warm and distant. Life continued there. Laughter, meals, bonds forming and strengthening. But Elena remained here, night after night, clinging to the only place where she still felt connected to what she'd lost. Her wolf was silent, retreating so deep inside her that sometimes Elena wondered if she'd died too, leaving only this human husk behind. Elena Thorne. The voice cut through the darkness like a blade, deep, commanding, utterly devoid of sympathy. Elena's spine stiffened. She didn't turn. She knew that voice. Everyone in the 5 territories knew that voice. Kirin Bloodmoon, the Lycan King. "Leave me alone," she said quietly, her fingers tightening around the stone's edge. "I'm afraid I cannot do that." His footsteps approached, measured and deliberate, each one resonating with an authority that made her wolf stir for the first time in weeks. Not in greeting, but in warning. "You've been summoned to the capital." Elena laughed, a bitter sound that tasted like ash. "Summoned? How nice." She finally turned, still kneeling, and looked up at him. He stood backlit by moonlight, a towering figure of raw power, 6'5" of pure muscle, with eyes that gleamed gold even in human form. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing sharp features that looked carved from stone, beautiful and merciless. He wore black, always black, as if in perpetual mourning for the gentleness he'd never possessed. "I'm not going anywhere," Elena said flatly. Kirin's jaw tightened. "This is not a request." "Then it's a command I'm refusing." She turned back to the grave, dismissing him. A Lycan King, as if he were nothing. "Tell the council I'm not interested in whatever political games they're playing. Find another Omega parade around." Silence stretched between them, thick and dangerous. Then Kirin moved, and suddenly he was crouching beside her, close enough that his scent hit her like a physical force. Wild pine, thunderstorms, and something ancient and untamed that made her breath catch. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice dropping to a growl that vibrated through her bones. Against her will, her eyes lifted to his. The gold in them blazed, primal and absolute. "You are no longer pack property, Elena Thorne. As of tonight, you belong to me. You will come to the capital. You will stand at my side. And you will carry my heir." His words were precise, each one landing like a physical blow. "The bloodline must continue. I have chosen you." Elena stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "You've... What?" "You heard me." He stood, towering over her once more. "Your mourning period is over. You will be my mate." Something cracked inside her, the fragile numbness that had been holding her together since James died. Fury, bright and cleansing, roared to life. "How dare you?" Elena surged at her feet, shaking with rage. "How dare you come here, to his grave, and—" "He's dead," Kirin interrupted, his tone brutal in its honesty. "You're alive, and you're wasting that life rotting in a cemetery." Elena's hand moved before she could think, her palm cracking against his cheek with enough force to snap his head to the side. The sound echoed through the graveyard like a gunshot. For one heartbeat, two, neither of them moved. When Kirin slowly turned back to face her, his eyes were pure flame, his wolf rising to the surface. A normal wolf would have cowered, should have cowered. But Elena was too angry, too broken to care if he tore her apart. "Kill me then," she said softly, meeting his gaze without flinching. "It would be a mercy." Something flickered in his expression, there and gone so fast she might have imagined it. Surprise? Pain? But then his face hardened once more into that impenetrable mask. "I don't deal in mercy," he said. "I deal in survival. The kingdom needs an heir. You need a purpose. We will both get what we require." He turned and began walking toward the black SUV waiting at the cemetery gates. Over his shoulder, he added, "You have until dawn to say goodbye. Then you're mine." Elena stood trembling beside James's grave, fury and despair warring inside her. Behind her lay her past, her heart, everything she'd loved. Before her walked a king who saw her as nothing more than a vessel. And between them, something neither understood yet. A mate bond beginning to spark in the darkness, whether they wanted it or not. If you lost everything, could you find the strength to start again? Drop your thoughts below. Would you fight the king or accept fate? If you're already hooked, hit that like button. Let's see if Elena can thaw the Lycan King's frozen heart. Elena stood in her small cottage, staring at the single bag she'd packed. Everything she owned, everything she was, fit into one worn duffel. Photographs of James, his favorite flannel shirt that still carried a ghost of his scent. The silver moon pendant he'd given her the night he proposed. Her hand trembled as she zipped the bag closed. A sharp knock rattled her door. Not a request, a summons. "It's time," came a clipped female voice. One of the king's guards. Elena took one last look at the cottage, at the life she'd built with James, now reduced to dust and memories. Then she opened the door and stepped into her new reality. The Lycan King's castle rose from the mountainside like a crown of black stone and silver towers, ancient and imposing. Elena felt its weight pressing down on her as the SUV climbed the winding road, her stomach twisting tighter with each passing mile. She'd been silent for the entire 3-hour journey. So had Kieran, who sat across from her in the vehicle's spacious interior, his attention fixed on a tablet as he reviewed what she assumed were kingdom affairs. He hadn't looked at her once. Good. She didn't want his attention. Liar, her wolf whispered, finally stirring. "You feel it too." Elena shoved the traitorous thought down. She felt nothing. She would feel nothing. The SUV stopped before massive iron gates that swung open soundlessly. Inside, the castle courtyard bustled with activity. Guards training, servants rushing between buildings, nobles in fine clothes discussing politics. All of it stopped the moment Kieran emerged from the vehicle. Every head bowed, every knee bent. Elena climbed out after him, feeling dozens of eyes assess her, judging, measuring, finding her wanting. "This way," Kieran said without looking back, striding toward the main entrance. Elena followed because she had no choice, her bag clutched tight in her fist. They passed through corridors of polished marble and dark wood, past portraits of stern-faced kings and queens who'd ruled before. Finally, Kieran stopped before an ornate door and pushed it open. "Your chambers," he announced. Elena stepped inside and froze. The room was enormous, easily 3 times the size of her entire cottage. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in deep crimson silks. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the mountains. A fireplace large enough to stand in crackles with fresh flames. It was a queen's room, a cage dressed in luxury. "I'll give you an hour to settle in," Kieran said from the doorway. "Then you'll join me for dinner. We have much to discuss." "About your heir?" Elena's voice dripped with bitterness as she turned to face him. His eyes finally met hers, and the intensity in them stole her breath. "Among other things. And if I refuse? If I lock this door and never come out?" Kieran stepped into the room, closing the distance between them with predatory grace. He didn't stop until mere inches separated them, until his heat radiated against her skin, until his scent wrapped around her like chains made of lightning and storm. "Then I'll break down the door," he said softly, dangerously. "I'll carry you to my chambers. I'll spread you across my bed. And I won't stop until my heir is growing in your womb. Elena, this can be easy or it can be hard, but it will happen." Her heart hammered against her ribs. From fear or something far more dangerous, she refused to acknowledge. "You're a monster." "Yes." He reached out, his fingers catching her chin. tilting her face up to his. His touch burned. But I'm your monster now. The sooner you accept that, the easier this becomes. Elena jerked away from him, fury blazing. I will never accept this. Never accept you. Something flickered in his eyes again, that brief crack in his armor. You say that now. His voice dropped lower, almost gentle. Almost. But I smell it on you, Elena. Beneath the grief and anger, you feel the bond trying to form. You feel the pull. I feel nothing, she lied. Kieran's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Liar. He turned toward the door, then paused. Wear something nice for dinner. Tonight, I present you to the court as my chosen mate. They'll expect you to look at the part. And if I show up in rags? He glanced back, and this time his smile held teeth. Then I'll dress you myself. Slowly. Thoroughly. Perhaps I'll enjoy that even more. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded like a prison cell locking. Elena stood alone in her golden cage, trembling with rage and something else. Something that felt treacherously like anticipation. Her wolf paced inside her, restless and hungry, drawn to the Lycan King despite everything. She moved to the window and stared out at the mountains, at the forest that separated her from her old life, from James's grave, from everything she'd known. I'm sorry, she whispered to the ghost of her first mate. I'm so sorry. But James couldn't answer. He never would again. And somewhere in this castle, a king waited to claim her, body, soul, and womb, whether she was ready or not. Elena stared at the gowns laid out on her bed. 12 of them, each more extravagant than the last. Silks, velvets, and fabrics she couldn't even name, in colors ranging from midnight blue to deep emerald. A note lay atop them in bold, masculine script. Choose one, or I'll choose for you. K. Her fingers traced over a gown of deep wine red, the color of blood under moonlight. Something about it called to her, perhaps because it matched the anger still simmering in her veins. Fine. If he wanted to parade her before his court, she'd play the part. But she'd do it on her terms. An hour later, Elena studied herself in the full-length mirror. The gown hugged her curves before flowing to the floor in elegant waves. Her dark hair, usually pulled back carelessly, now cascaded over her shoulders in soft waves. She looked like someone else. Someone who belonged in a castle. Someone who wasn't drowning in grief. The thought made her stomach twist. A knock sounded, softer this time. My lady, a young woman's voice. The king sent me to escort you. Elena opened the door to find a girl who couldn't be more than 19, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. I'm Mara, she said. Your lady's maid, if you'll have me. I don't need it. Elena stopped herself. It wasn't this girl's fault. Thank you, Mara. Lead the way. They descended through corridors that grew progressively grander, the sound of music and conversation growing louder. Elena's heart hammered faster with each step. At the entrance to what Mara called the Great Hall, 2 guards stood at attention. Lady Elena Thorne, one announced, pushing open the massive doors. The hall fell silent. Elena forced herself to walk forward, her chin high despite the dozens of eyes tracking her every movement. The room was magnificent. Vaulted ceilings painted with scenes of ancient hunts, crystal chandeliers casting golden light, tables laden with enough food to feed her entire former pack. And at the far end, seated on a throne of black stone, was Kieran. He rose as she approached, his eyes locked on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He changed into formal attire, a black jacket with silver threading that caught the light, making him look even more imposing, more kingly, more dangerous. Elena, he said, her name a caress and a command. He descended from the dais, closing the distance between them. You look like a doll you've dressed up, she supplied coldly. His lips curved slightly. I was going to say magnificent. He offered his arm. Shall we? She had no choice but to take it, feeling the corded muscle beneath the expensive fabric, the heat of him seeping through her skin. He led her to the high table, seating her at his right hand, the position of honor, or possession. As soon as they sat, the hall erupted back into noise. Conversations resumed, music played, servants rushed forward with wine and food. But Elena felt the stares and heard the whispers. Just an omega from a minor pack. Heard her mate died. How tragic. The king could have anyone, why her? Ignore them, Kieran murmured, filling her wine glass. Court vipers always hiss. They'll accept you soon enough. Will they? Elena met his gaze. Or will I always be the replacement? The broodmare brought in to secure your precious bloodline. His jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a woman approached their table. She was stunning, tall, blonde, with the kind of confidence that came from privilege. Her gown was gold, cut scandalously low. Your Majesty, she purred, bowing just enough to be respectful while giving Kieran an ample view. Welcome back. We've missed you terribly. Lady Vivian, Kieran acknowledged coolly. Vivian's blue eyes slid to Elena, assessing and dismissing her in one glance. And this must be the guest we've heard so much about. How quaint. Elena's wolf snarled inside her. She recognized a challenger when she saw one. Not a guest, Kieran said, his voice dropping to that dangerous register. My mate. You will address her as such, or you will leave my court. Permanently. The threat hung in the air. Vivian's smile tightened, but she bowed to Elena. Of course, my lady. The words dripped with venom. I hope you find our court accommodating. She swept away, but not before shooting Elena a look that promised future trouble. Old conquest? Elena asked dryly. Brief and meaningless, Kieran replied. Unlike what we will become. We will become nothing, Elena said, reaching for her wine. You'll get your heir, and then I'll be free of you. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop her. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. Look at me. Reluctantly, she did. You think I chose you at random? His voice was low, meant only for her ears. You think I don't see you, Elena? I see everything. The strength beneath your grief. The fire you're trying to bury. The wolf you've silenced because you're afraid if she wakes up, you'll have to admit you're still alive. Her breath caught. You don't know anything about me. I know you visit his grave every night. I know you stopped eating properly 2 months ago. I know you haven't shifted since he died because you can't bear to feel your wolf's grief on top of your own. His thumb traced her pulse point, feeling it race. I know you're drowning, and you're too stubborn to reach for a lifeline. And you're that lifeline? She tried to inject scorn into her voice, but it came out shaky. How noble. I never claimed to be noble. His eyes held hers, gold bleeding into them. I'm selfish. I want an heir. I want my bloodline secured. But I also want. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his features. I want someone who understands what it means to be broken. Elena's heart stuttered. What? But Kieran released her wrist and turned away, addressing the hall. A toast. His voice rang out with royal command. Conversations ceased. Glasses raised. To Lady Elena Thorne, my chosen mate. May our union bring strength to this kingdom and continue the Blood Moon legacy. To Lady Elena, the court echoed, though Elena heard the doubt in many voices. She lifted her glass mechanically, the wine bitter on her tongue. Beside her, Kieran sat tall and untouchable once more, the vulnerable moment gone as if it had never existed. The feast continued. Course after the course arrived. Roasted game, fresh bread, fruits she'd never seen before. Elena picked at her food, hyper-aware of Kieran's presence beside her, of the way nobles kept approaching to offer congratulations that felt like assessments. You're doing well, Mara whispered during a lull, appearing at Elena's elbow to refill her water. The court is difficult, but you're holding your own. I don't belong here, Elena murmured back. None of us did at first, Mara said softly. But you will. Give it time. Time. As if time could heal what was broken inside her. As if time could make her forget James's smile, his laugh, the way he'd held her through her nightmares. as if time could make her accept this golden prison and the king who ruled it. "Dance with me." Elena startled. Kieran stood, offering his hand. Music had begun. A slow, sensual melody that spoke of moonlight and hunts. "I don't." It wasn't a request. But his tone had softened slightly. "The court expects it. Our first dance as mates." Elena placed her hand in his because refusing would cause a scene. He led her to the center of the hall, and suddenly they were alone in a sea of watching eyes. His hand settled on her waist, burning through the fabric. Her hand rested on his shoulder, feeling the power coiled beneath. They began to move. "Relax," he murmured. "You're stiff as a board." "Maybe because I'm being forced to dance with a man who threatened to." She stopped herself, suddenly aware of how close they were, how his scent was wrapping around her, wild and intoxicating. "To claim you." He pulled her closer, until their bodies nearly touched. "I meant every word, Elena, but I'm not a monster. When I take you to my bed, you'll be begging for it." Heat flooded her cheeks. "Your arrogance is astounding." "Is it arrogance if it's true?" His lips curved near her ear. "Your pulse races when I touch you. Your scent sweetens when I get close. You can lie with your words, but your body tells me everything." "My body is grieving and confused," she hissed. "Don't mistake that for desire. Grief and desire aren't mutually exclusive." His hand tightened on her waist. "You can mourn what you lost and still feel what's growing between us. The mate bond doesn't ask permission, Elena. It simply is." The song ended. Elena pulled back, her heart hammering, her skin flushed. Around them, the court applauded politely, but she barely heard it over the roaring in her ears. "I need air," she said abruptly. She didn't wait for permission, just turned and walked swiftly toward the balcony doors. Behind her, she felt Kieran's gaze like a brand between her shoulder blades, but he didn't follow. The night air hit her like a blessing. Elena gripped the stone balustrade, gulping in deep breaths, trying to calm the chaos inside her. The castle overlooked the forest, dark and vast beneath the moon. Somewhere out there was her old life, her old love, her old self. "I can't do this," she whispered to the darkness. "James, I can't." But James was gone, and she was here, trapped in a castle with a king who saw too much, who threatened and promised in the same breath, who made her feel things she had no right to feel. A king whose air she was meant to carry. A king who was slowly, inexorably, becoming impossible to resist. Stop right here. If this story is pulling you in, if you're feeling Elena's pain and Kieran's dark intensity, then I need you to do something right now. Smash that like button if you want to see Elena fight back or surrender. Subscribe and turn on notifications because this story is about to get intense, and you do not want to miss what happens at that dinner. Comment below. Hashtag Team Elena if you think she should resist, or hashtag Team Kieran if you believe he's exactly what she needs to heal. Let's see which team is bigger. Can you truly love again after devastating loss? Or is moving on a betrayal? Share your personal thoughts or experiences below. Your story matters, and it could help someone else in this pack. Your engagement is everything. Every like tells me you're hooked. Every comment builds our community. Every subscription means you'll be here when the climax hits in the continuation. Your comment could be featured in the next part. Don't be a ghost. Be part of the pack. Elena didn't know how long she stood on that balcony, staring into the darkness. Minutes? Hours? Time felt meaningless when you were trying to hold together pieces that no longer fit. "You'll catch cold." She didn't turn. She'd felt him approach. Felt the way the air shifted, charged with his presence. "I'm fine." "You're trembling." Kieran's voice was closer now, right behind her. She felt his heat at her back, warming the night chill. "Come inside, Elena." "Why do you care?" The words came out broken, tired. "You got what you wanted. The court saw us together. They saw me in your arms. Isn't that enough?" Silence. Then his hands settled on her shoulders, gentle despite their strength. "Look at me." "No." Her voice cracked. "I can't keep doing this. Can't keep pretending I'm not." She stopped, biting back the truth. Not what? He turned her around, his hands still on her shoulders, his golden eyes searching hers in the moonlight. Say it. Broken, she whispered. I'm broken, Kieran. Shattered into so many pieces I don't even know where to start putting myself back together. And you stand there and talk about heirs and bloodlines and destiny like I'm whole. Like I'm capable of being what you need. Something shifted in his expression, the mask cracking, falling away. You think you're the only one who's broken? Elena stared at him. What? Kieran's jaw tightened, a war playing out behind his eyes. Then he spoke, his voice raw in a way she'd never heard. Her name was Iris, my true mate. I found her 2 years ago in a village on the northern border. His hands fell from Elena's shoulders, clenching into fists at his sides. We had 3 months together. 3 perfect months before the crimson fever took her. Elena's breath stopped. The crimson fever, a plague that had swept through the territories years ago, killing hundreds. No cure. No survivors. I held her while she died, Kieran continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Watched the light fade from her eyes. Felt our mate bond snap like a severed rope. And for months after, I wanted to follow her into the darkness. Would have, if not for my duty to the crown. Kieran. Elena breathed, her anger dissolving into something else. Understanding. Recognition. So yes, Elena, I know what it means to be broken. I know what it means to wake up every morning and wonder why you're still breathing when the person you love most isn't. His eyes met hers, and she saw it now, the carefully hidden pain, the grief he wore like armor. I chose you because I knew you'd understand. Because I thought maybe 2 broken pieces could hold each other up. Tears burned Elena's eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Because a king isn't supposed to grieve, he said bitterly. A king is supposed to be strong, unbreakable. The council gave me a year, then demanded I choose a new mate, secure the bloodline, do my duty. His hand rose, cupping her face with a tenderness that stole her breath. And when I saw you at that cemetery, so fierce in your grief, so unwilling to pretend you were fine, I knew. Knew what? Elena whispered, leaning into his touch despite herself. That you were the only one who could ever understand. His thumb traced her cheekbone, catching a tear. Maybe we could heal each other. Not forget, never forget. But heal. Elena's wolf stirred, pushing forward with an urgency that made her gasp. The mate bond, dormant until now, suddenly flared to life between them. A golden thread pulling taut, binding, burning. I feel it, she breathed. Kieran, I feel. I know. His forehead pressed against hers, his breathing ragged. I felt it since the moment I saw you. Been fighting it because I thought accepting it meant betraying her memory. And now, his eyes opened, meeting hers with raw honesty. Now I think she'd want me to live, just like James would want you to live. Not just survive, Elena. Live. The truth of it hit her like a physical blow. James had always been the first to tell her to chase joy, to embrace life fully. Would he really want her spending eternity at his grave? I'm scared, Elena admitted, her voice small. Scared of forgetting him. Scared of what it means if I let myself feel this. Her hand pressed against Kieran's chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her palm. Scared of how much I already want you. Kieran's control shattered. His hands framed her face as he lowered his lips to hers. Not demanding, not commanding, but asking. Offering. Elena rose on her toes and closed the distance. The kiss was soft at first, tentative. 2 wounded souls reaching for each other in the darkness. Then the mate bond ignited fully, crashing over them in waves of heat and light and desperate need. Elena gasped against his mouth, and Kieran deepened the kiss, one hand sliding into her hair, the other wrapping around her waist and pulling her flush against him. This wasn't the cold command from before. This was raw emotion, shared grief transforming into shared hunger. Elena's fingers gripped his jacket, holding on as if he were the only solid thing in a spinning world. He tasted like whiskey and midnight and something wild that called to every broken part of her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena's lips were swollen and her body trembled with want. "Come to my chambers," Kieran said hoarsely, his thumb tracing her kiss-reddened lips. "Not because I command it, not for duty or heirs or bloodlines, but because you want to, because you feel this bond as strongly as I do." Elena's heart raced. Every logical part of her screamed to refuse, to run, to hide behind her grief. But her wolf was howling, pushing forward, demanding she accept what fate was offering. And beneath it all, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. "Hope." "Yes," she whispered, the word both surrender and choice. "Yes." Kieran's eyes blazed gold. He swept her into his arms as if she weighed nothing, carrying her from the balcony through corridors that blurred together. Elena buried her face in his neck, breathing in his scent, feeling the mate bond pulse between them like a living thing. They passed startled servants, guards who quickly averted their eyes. She didn't care. For the first time since James died, she felt alive, terrified and exhilarated and absolutely certain this was where she needed to be. Kieran kicked open the door to his chambers. Massive, masculine, dominated by a bed large enough for a king and his queen. He set her down gently, his hands still trembling slightly as they cupped her face. "Last chance to change your mind," he said roughly. "Because once I start, Elena, once I claim you as mine, I won't be able to stop." She met his gaze, seeing her own fear and hope reflected back. "Then don't stop," she breathed. "Don't stop until we're both whole again." Kieran growled, the sound purely wolf, and captured her mouth in a searing kiss that promised exactly that. Healing, passion, a future neither had dared to imagine. And as the moon rose higher outside, two broken souls began, at last, to mend. Dawn light filtered through the heavy curtains, painting Kieran's chambers in shades of gold and amber. Elena woke slowly, cocooned in warmth and silk sheets that smelled of pine and thunderstorms of him. For a moment, panic fluttered in her chest. Then she felt the solid weight of Kieran's arm around her waist, felt his breath steady and warm against her neck, and something inside her settled. She wasn't drowning anymore. The mate bond hummed between them, golden and strong, no longer fighting to exist but simply being. Elena could feel his emotions even in sleep. Contentment, protectiveness, and beneath it all, a fierce possessiveness that should have terrified her but instead made her feel safe, cherished. "James," she thought, closing her eyes, "I hope you understand. I hope wherever you are, you know I'll never forget you. But I need to live. You'd want me to live." A gentle breeze stirred the curtains, carrying the scent of morning dew and wildflowers. Elena chose to believe it was his answer, his blessing. "You're thinking too loud," Kieran murmured against her shoulder, his voice rough with sleep, his arm tightened around her. "What's going through that beautiful head of yours?" Elena turned in his embrace, meeting those golden eyes, softer now, without the harsh edges of command. "I was thinking," she said quietly, her hand resting over his heart, "that maybe broken things can be repaired, not the same as before, but stronger for having been shattered." Kieran's expression gentled. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch reverent. "Like gold in the cracks," he said. "The Japanese have a word for it. Kintsugi. The art of repairing broken pottery with gold, making it more beautiful for having been broken." "You know about Japanese pottery?" Elena's lips quirked despite herself. His mouth curved into a genuine smile, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. "I'm a king. I'm supposed to be cultured." Then his expression grew serious. "But yes, that's what we are, Elena. Kintsugi. Broken and repaired with something precious." She leaned up and kissed him, soft and lingering. When she pulled back, she saw something shift in his eyes, a vulnerability he no longer tried to hide. "I meant what I said last night," Kieran said, his thumb tracing circles on her hip beneath the sheets. "This isn't just about an heir anymore. This is about us. Building something real. I know. Elena pressed her forehead to his. I feel it. The bond. It's like coming home after being lost in a storm. Then stay, he whispered. Not because I command it, but because you choose it. Choose me. Choose us. I already have, she said simply. They lay there as sunlight strengthened, two souls no longer fighting their fate, but embracing it. Eventually, Kieran rose and pulled her with him, wrapping her in one of his shirts that fell nearly to her knees. He dressed in simple trousers and a loose linen shirt, looking less like a king and more like a man discovering what it meant to be happy. Come, he said, taking her hand. I want to show you something. He led her through private corridors she hadn't seen before, down to a secluded garden behind the castle. It was wild and beautiful, roses tangling with honeysuckle, a small pond reflecting the morning sky, stone benches worn smoothly by time. This was Iris's favorite place, Kieran said quietly, guiding Elena to a bench beneath a weeping willow. After she died, I couldn't come here. It hurt too much. Elena squeezed his hand, understanding perfectly. But I think, he turned to face her, both hands holding hers now. I think she'd want it to be a place of life again, of new beginnings. His eyes held hers with an intensity that stole her breath. I want to honor both our pasts, Elena. Build a memorial here for Iris and James. Not to keep us trapped in grief, but to acknowledge that they shaped who we are. That they'll always be part of our story. Tears blurred Elena's vision, but for the first time in months, they were tears of healing, not just pain. You do that. We'll do it together, Kieran corrected. Their memories deserve to be honored, and our future deserves to be built on truth, not pretending the past didn't exist. Elena threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest as she cried, releasing months of pent-up anguish, guilt, and fear. Kieran held her through it all, his own tears falling silent into her hair. Two broken people finally allowing themselves to grieve properly, and to heal. When the storm passed, Elena pulled back and looked up at him. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me, for understanding. Always, he promised, sealing it with a kiss. 3 months later, Elena stood in that same garden, her hand resting on the gentle swell of her belly. The memorial was complete. 2 beautiful statues beneath the willow tree, Iris and James forever immortalized in marble, their faces peaceful. Flowers bloomed around them in wild profusion, maintained by Elena herself. Talking to them again? Kieran's voice was warm as he came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on her shoulder. His hands covered hers over their growing child. Just telling them about the baby, Elena said softly. Telling them we're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay, Kieran murmured, turning her to face him. The golden mate bond blazed between them, stronger every day. We're going to be happy, Elena. We're going to build something beautiful from the ashes. She smiled, a real smile, full of hope and love and the future stretching before them. We already have. Kieran kissed her, deep and smiling and tender all at once. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. I love you, he said, not because fate chose you for me, but because I chose you, every day, always. I love you too, Elena whispered back. Both of you. Her hand moved to her belly again, feeling their heir, their child, growing strong within her. The Lycan King had demanded an heir, but what he'd found instead was something far more precious. A true mate, a healed heart, and a love powerful enough to honor the past while embracing the future. As they walked back toward the castle hand in hand, the sun warmed on their faces and their child was safe between them. Elena looked back one last time at the memorial. A gentle breeze stirred the willow branches, and she could have sworn she heard James's voice on the wind. Live, Elena. Live fully. Love completely. Be happy. And finally, she could. Elena and Kieran's journey reminds us that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about honoring what was while opening your heart to what could be. Grief and love can coexist. Broken pieces can become beautiful again. If this story touched something in you, hope, healing, or the courage to open your heart again, leave a comment below sharing what resonated most. Your words might be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. Hit like if you believe in second chances and subscribe for more stories about love that heals, transforms, and endures. Have you ever had to choose between honoring your past and embracing your future? How did you find the courage to move forward while keeping precious memories alive? Share your story in the comments. This pack is built on connection, understanding, and the knowledge that none of us heal alone.